From Northern Avenue in Yerevan, this is CivilNet's Daily News Digest. I'm Maria Titizian, and here are the top stories from Monday, March 3. Thousands rally in Liberty Square to mark the 6th anniversary of post-election violence on March 1, 2008. Also, Armenia's health ministry backs down from a controversial measure that had pregnant women protesting. Plus, what happens when a president comes for a visit? And later, see how a friendship between two little boys raised over $500,000 and changed lives. Following a contested presidential election between Serge Sarkisyan and Levon Ter-Petrosyan in 2008, hundreds of people rallied in Liberty Square for weeks until the government sent in special security forces on March 1 to clear them out, and in the resulting melee that lasted until the early morning hours of March 2nd, hundreds were injured and 10 people had lost their lives. On Saturday, the Armenian National Congress held a rally in Liberty Square to mark the 6th anniversary of that bloody day. Over 10,000 came to honor the memory of those who died and to hear what the ANC had to say. Former President Levon Ter-Petrosyan yet again called for President Sarkisyan's resignation, but did not announce a new campaign of anti-government protests. In his speech, Ter-Petrosyan made some key statements. First, that the Congress needed the support of the other major opposition forces to take advantage of the favorable conditions for regime change. He underscored growing cooperation among the ANC and the other three opposition parties in parliament, as well as Sarkisyan's perceived loss of international support. He also said that Armenia's accession to the Russian-led customs union was now irreversible and European integration impossible for the foreseeable future. He said, accordingly, the ANC and other political forces must base their political calculations on this undeniable reality because neglecting it could lead to serious mistakes and dangerous consequences. Ter-Petrosyan was very clear that he was opposed to the kind of violence that brought down regimes in Egypt and Ukraine, stating that Armenia cannot afford the, quote, luxury of civil war because of its size and the unresolved Karabakh conflict. Following the speeches, demonstrators walked to Myasnikyan Square to lay flowers at the scene where the 10 men had been killed in 2008. The U.S. co-chair of the OSCE Minsk Group, James Warlick, has been actively tweeting in recent months, presumably to express his opinion about the unresolved Karabakh conflict and the ongoing ceasefire violations, and Friday was no exception. He urged the sides of the Karabakh conflict to continue maintaining the ceasefire regime on the line of contact after the recent Sochi Winter Olympics. He tweeted, quote, "The governments of Armenia and Azerbaijan should continue the Olympic truce and respect the ceasefire. Too many have died, don't you agree?" It was during the Winter Games that the sides agreed to an Olympic truce. Armenia's health ministry has backtracked its decision on suspending free medical care for women with high-risk pregnancies. On Friday, a controversial measure that called on state-run medical clinics or polyclinics in Yerevan to charge patients 1,000 dirhams, or about $2.40 for blood tests, and 5,000 dirhams a day for pregnant women hospitalized because of complications, sparked anger in Yerevan as dozens of protesters, mostly women, protested in front of the ministry. These services were free of charge before the introduction of this directive, which the ministry claimed was to curb corruption in the form of symbolic or informal payments prevalent in the health system. The measure has now been delayed until July 1 in order to, quote, clarify mechanisms for the introduction. The U.S. State Department's Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor issued reports on human rights practices worldwide for 2013. The executive summary of the country report for Armenia states, "The most significant human rights problems during the year were corruption and lack of transparency in government, limitations on the right of citizens to change their government, and the limited independence of the judiciary. Allegations of persistent corruption at all levels of government undermine the rule of law, although the government took limited steps to punish corruption by low and mid-level officials." The report also noted that despite candidates' ability to campaign freely, flaws in the conduct of the presidential election included a lack of impartiality by the public administration, the misuse of government resources to support the ruling party, credible allegations of vote buying, continued shortcomings in the implementation of the electoral code, and a complaints and appeals process that failed to provide for effective redress. Last week, Georgian President Giorgi Margvelashvili was in Armenia for a two-day official visit. Aside from his official meetings and press briefings, Margvelashvili decided to pay a visit to an old friend. When the Georgian president was serving in the Soviet army in 1987, he was stationed in Echmiadzin, Armenia. During his service, he met Robert Abrahamian and his family, who ended up taking good care of him. This was a friendship that had made such an impression on the Georgian president that he wanted to thank the Abrahamians once more, this time in person. Take a look. Markvelashvili said that these are relations that historically link the Armenians and the Georgians to one another. One of Armenia's most cherished historical monuments is the 1st century BC Garni Temple. The complex is maintained by the Service for the Protection of Historical Environment and Cultural Museum Reservations, a non-commercial state organization under the auspices of the Ministry of Culture. This agency has allowed the construction of a cafe. The agency claims that the convenience of a cafe on the site will help boost tourism, while a portion of the revenues from this business venture will be funneled to maintain the structure and the site. This has caused an uproar in the country. Yesterday, dozens of activists and citizens went to Garni to remove some of the construction material already on site. In an act of defiance, they shoveled gravel and sand in bags, which they then brought to Yerevan and dumped in front of the Ministry of Culture's building. Local workers there said that officials from the ministry had visited the site earlier, had met with the police and the mayor of Garni, and a 5-day ban on the construction was placed so that the issue of the cafe could be reviewed. Taner Akcam, Turkish historian and genocide scholar, spoke with Civilitas Foundation director Salpi Ghazarian via Skype about the European Court of Human Rights verdict on the Perincek versus Switzerland case, where the veracity of the Armenian genocide was questioned. Professor Akcam pointed to legal flaws in a decision that can have massive ramifications. He also talked about Turkey's domestic power struggle and possible outcomes. Here is a clip from that interview.
This is a legal mistake that the court makes. Look, the crime against humanity was established in case of Armenian genocide 1915. Crime against humanity established as a crime category by an international body in Paris Peace Conference. There was a subcommittee to determine the crimes and to establish an international court. And this commission also established the crime category as crime against humanity in case of Armenians.
To watch the full report, you can follow the link on your screen. Meher Manukyan, a member of the rock band Love Ellie, is often known as the singer of social movements. His creativity is inspired by his inner voice and from an innate sense of social justice. He insists his music is not about preaching, but rather it is simply an expression of who he is. For Hidden People, the father of 4 young children invited us into his home to talk about his life, his music, and his dreams. And in the process, we were given a very special performance. Here's a short clip.
Ախ այդ դեմքերը գետացի ու կաշի, ախ այդ աչքերը հոգու կապարիչ, այստեղ ես օտար եմ, այստեղ ես օտար եմ, ես եկել եմ ուրիշ աշխարից, նրանք որ կարված են իրենք իրենց մեջ, նրանք որ սնվում են իրենք իրենցով, ախ այդ դեմքերին ոչ մուտքա, ոչ ելք, համակ կշտություն, ոչ մի կաթիլ սով.
To watch the full episode, you can click on the link on your screen. Armenia's national football team has a new coach. In his 40-year career as a soccer manager, Swiss coach Bernard Chaland has coached a number of teams, including the Swiss under-21 soccer team FC Zurich, Servette, FC Sion, and others. According to the Football Federation, more than 4 candidates were considered for the position after the departure of Vartar Minasyan last year. Shaland arrived in Yerevan over the weekend to travel to Russia with the team for a friendly match on March 5. Shaland will officially take up his position after that game. And here is a remarkable story about the power of friendship, or when one little boy decides he's going to save his best friend's life. Dylan Siegel's friend Jonah Burnazarian has an extremely rare liver disease, and funds for his treatment had almost dried up. So, Dylan decided to write a book called The Chocolate Bar Book to help raise money to find a cure. That dream has raised over $600,000 and will assist in the work of doctors at a Florida lab who think they are very close to finding a cure. Jonah has glycogen storage disease type 1b, which is a rare liver disorder that causes dangerously low blood sugar. As one of 500 children in the world with the disease, Jonah has to be fed every few hours through a feeding tube in his stomach. The exchange rate is up on your screen as we take a look at your forecast. It'll be a partly cloudy day in Yerevan with a high of 17 and a low of 2. Gyumri will have a high of 2 and a low of -3. Stepanakert, the capital of Nagorno-Karabakh, will have a high of 2 and a low of 3. And our travel forecast takes us to the city of Vanatsor, where the high will be 5 and the low a -1. Vanatsor is the third largest city in Armenia and the capital of the Mars of Glory in the northern part of the country. It used to be known as Gharakilise during Russian rule. After the fall of the Tsar, Vanatsor was briefly known as Mardunagan, but after the Sovietization of Armenia, it was named Kirovagan. After Armenia claimed independence in 1991, Kirovagan was renamed this time Vanatsor. Human settlement in the area dates back to the Bronze Age with interesting tombs and remains in the nearby hills of Takavoranist and Mashdots. Vanatsor belonged to the Dashir canton of Gugark. The settlement was ruled by Armenian dynasties of the Arsacids and Pakradunis. From the 10th to 12th centuries, it was part of the kingdom of Lori. With the invasion of the Seljuk Turks, the town was named Gharakilise because of the black stone church of the Holy Mother of God. In 1801, it became part of the Russian Empire. In 1826, Gharakilise was totally destroyed by Hassan Khan during the Russian-Persian War. In 1849, it became part of the Yerevan Governorate within the Russian Empire. The vicinity of the city was the site of the Battle of Gharakilise when, in May 1918, Garegin Nejde successfully defeated the invading Turkish army, pushing them back after the crucial Battle of Sardarabad, thus allowing the creation of the First Republic of Armenia. Following Sovietization, Vanatsor expanded, and in 1939 the city was remodeled as an industrial district. Vanatsor, like Gyumri and Spitak, suffered considerable damage during the 1988 earthquake when 564 residents died. However, unlike the other two cities, the buildings in Vanatsor were mostly unscathed from the earthquake. And that is our digest for this Monday, March the 3rd. We leave you today with a performance by Meher Manukyan and the rock band Love Eli. Enjoy, and I will see you back here tomorrow.